You think no contact is supposed to make them miss you. So you hold your breath. You wait. You count the hours since their last message, like each one might suddenly become proof that you mattered. And when the silence stretches too long, something inside you starts shaking. Your chest gets tight. Your thoughts get loud. You tell yourself you're being strong, but beneath that strength is panic. Beneath that calm is a storm. Because the truth is, you are not just sitting in silence. You are fighting the urge to reach for the person who made you feel abandoned. And this is where most people lose them. Not in the breakup, not in the argument, not even in the moment the avoidant pulled away. They lose them in the silence that comes after. Because during no contact, the thing that pushes an avoidant away is almost never the silence itself. It's what you do with the silence. It's the energy you send into it, the emotional pressure, the invisible grasping, the one last message that just explains how you feel. The check-in that sounds casual but is loaded with longing. The story view, the indirect quote, the tiny digital breadcrumbs meant to stir guilt, memory, or desire. You think you are keeping the connection alive, but what they feel is the weight of being emotionally cornered again. That's the brutal truth. If you use no contact as a strategy to control their nervous system while abandoning your own, you are not creating attraction. You are recreating the exact emotional atmosphere that made them shut down in the first place. Because avoidant people do not move away from care the way most people think they do. They move away from pressure, from engulfment, from the feeling that someone else's emotional survival is starting to depend on them. And the cruel part is, you may not even be doing anything dramatic. You might just be sending a soft message. You might just be clearing the air. You might just be asking for closure. You might just be trying to be understood. But to an avoidant nervous system, intensity does not only live in words. It lives in expectation, in emotional charge, in the feeling behind your message. In the sense that if they respond wrong, too late, too little, they will be pulled into something bigger than they can regulate. So they freeze, then detach, then disappear deeper. Not always because they stopped caring. Sometimes because they cared and it flooded them. That is the part nobody tells you. Avoidant attachment is not coldness in the simple way people like to frame it. It is often a nervous system that learned very early that closeness can become chaos, that love can become demand, that being needed too deeply can feel like losing air. So when intimacy rises, the body doesn't interpret it as romance. It interprets it as danger. The amygdala sounds the alarm. Cortisol rises, the nervous system shifts into self-protection. Distance becomes relief, and relief is addictive. That's why they can look fine after pulling away. That's why they can seem lighter, freer, almost disturbingly unaffected. Their dopamine isn't coming from connection in that moment. It's coming from escape, from regained space, from the sudden drop in emotional pressure. But here is what most people misunderstand. Relief is not the same as peace, and distance is not the same as indifference. An avoidant can miss you and still not reach out. They can think about you and still avoid your name. They can care and still choose silence, because the body remembers overwhelm more vividly than the heart remembers love. So if during no contact you keep trying to prove your value, explain your pain, remind them of your bond, or show them what they are losing, you are feeding the very circuitry that tells them closeness equals stress. You are not helping them feel you. You are helping them escape you. That's why the one thing that changes everything during no contact is not silence as a performance. It is non-reactive silence. Not punishment, not manipulation, not the cold silence of, "I'll make you suffer." Non-reactive silence means your energy stops chasing, even when your mind still wants to. It means you stop trying to force movement through emotional effort. You stop reaching into their avoidant system with hooks disguised as love. You stop making your pain their assignment. And that changes the entire field. Because when you become non-reactive, something unexpected happens. The dynamic they were bracing against begins to disappear. For the first time, they are left alone with themselves. No emotional tug, no urgent pulse from you, no subtle pursuit wrapped in dignity, no pressure to respond perfectly, no atmosphere of demand hanging over every quiet moment. Just space. Real space. And space does something powerful to someone who only knows how to run from closeness. It removes the immediate threat, which means the nervous system can finally settle enough for absence to become visible. That is when your silence stops feeling like rejection to them and starts feeling like loss. Not because you vanished theatrically, because you stopped feeding the chase-repel cycle. Think about what usually happens. They pull back, you feel the distance and move closer. You text more carefully, more sweetly, more vulnerably. Or you act detached while secretly monitoring everything they do. You try to say the perfect thing. You replay the bond. You search for the exact message that will finally make them feel safe enough to return. But what they feel is your focus. They feel that you are still there, emotionally waiting at the door, still available for the old dynamic, still orienting around them, still trying to turn their inner world into something manageable for you. And strangely, that makes them feel less, not more, because nothing changes. There is no consequence to their distance, no emotional mirror, no encounter with your absence. They still feel your orbit around them, which means they never have to confront what life feels like when your energy is truly gone. Now imagine something different. They wake up and instinctively check their phone. Nothing from you. They post something vague. No reaction from you. They disappear for 3 days, expecting your curiosity to break the silence. It doesn't. They start to wonder whether you are still emotionally available in the same old way. They remember the warmth you gave them, but this time it is not standing there waiting to be used. It is somewhere else now, moving, breathing, living. That is when the avoidant mind starts doing what your messages never could. It starts filling in the blanks. And the human mind is often most haunted not by what is present, but by what it can no longer access. They begin to think, maybe I pushed too far. Maybe they're really done. Maybe I misread how deeply they could detach. Maybe I lost something safe. Maybe I lost someone who understood me better than I admitted. Maybe they are no longer mine to return to whenever I am ready. This is where longing begins. Not always loudly, not always immediately. Sometimes it begins as irritation, then curiosity, then restlessness, then that strange ache avoidants rarely name correctly. They don't always say, "I miss them." Sometimes it comes out as random checking, a scroll through old pictures, a late-night visit to your profile, a sudden memory while driving, a moment in bed when the room feels too quiet and your absence finally has shape. Because without your energy constantly reaching toward them, they can no longer organize themselves around resisting you. Now they have to feel. And that feeling is inconvenient. It interrupts their story that distance solved everything. It unsettles the relief. It reveals that what they called too much may have also been love, availability, tenderness, devotion. Things they could not receive without flinching. Things they still noticed when gone. But this only happens if your no contact is clean, not contaminated by hidden bids, not broken by lonely exceptions, not poisoned by the little behaviors people swear don't count. Let's be honest, most no contact is not no contact. It is anxious contact wearing a mask. It is silence with a pulse underneath it that says, "Please notice me. Please miss me. Please come back before I have to feel this fully." And that energy leaks. It leaks into the almost text, the accidental like, the birthday message you call mature, the closure paragraph, the drunk confession, the fake emergency, the friend who just happens to ask about you, the perfectly curated post meant to trigger nostalgia. Every time you do that, you soothe your own withdrawal for a moment, but you reset their distance. You remind their body that closeness with you still comes with pressure. Even if the pressure is subtle, even if the words are beautiful, even if your intention is love, especially then. Because this is not only about what they think, it is about what their nervous system associates with you. If every silence from you eventually breaks into emotional pursuit, then they learn that your presence is not spacious. It is anticipatory. It waits, then rushes. It hurts, then reaches. And their system stays braced for impact. That is why the hardest part of no contact is not ignoring your phone. It is tolerating the shame story that rises when you stop chasing. The part of you that says, "If I don't reach out, I'll be forgotten. If I don't explain, I'll be misunderstood. If I don't hold this together, it will collapse. If I let go, I lose." No. If you keep gripping, you lose yourself first. And that is the deeper pattern this relationship exposed. Not just their avoidance, but your willingness to overfunction in the presence of emotional scarcity. Your habit of translating inconsistency into a challenge. Your instinct to turn your love into labor. Your tendency to confuse pursuit with devotion. This is why non-reactive silence is not just about getting them back. It is about ending the arrangement where their withdrawal activates your abandonment, and your abandonment activates their withdrawal, until both of you are trapped inside roles that keep intimacy impossible. If they ever come back, it cannot be to the same version of you who panics and reaches every time the bond goes dark. That version of you may be loving, it may be sincere, but it is still available for the old dance, and the old dance always ends the same way. So during no contact, your task is not to become colder, it is to become less externally governed, to stop measuring your worth by their movement, to stop asking their nervous system for permission to feel whole, to let the craving pass through you without obeying it. That is power. Quiet power. The kind that does not announce itself, the kind that does not post for effect, the kind that does not need the last word, the kind that says, "I can love deeply and still leave space where love cannot breathe." And when you do this long enough, something shifts inside you before it shifts in them. You stop waking up with your identity wrapped around their silence. You stop reading meaning into every delay. You stop fantasizing about the exact message that will unlock them. You stop trying to regulate your pain by being chosen. You return to yourself. Your sleep gets cleaner. Your body softens. Your mind stops circling the same unanswered question. Dopamine stops coming only from the possibility of their return and begins to come from your own life again, your own movement, your own becoming. And that is the moment the whole dynamic changes. Because now, if they do feel your absence, they are not returning to someone frozen in longing. They are encountering someone who no longer leaks desperation through silence. Someone steadier. Someone harder to control without ever trying to control. Someone whose love is no longer begging to be handled carefully by a person who keeps dropping it. That's when the power flips. Not because you played a game better, because you stepped out of the game entirely. And yes, sometimes that is exactly when they come back. Not always with poetry. Sometimes with something small. A message that seems casual. A question that doesn't need asking. A memory. A reaction. A late-night opening disguised as nothing. Because now they are the one feeling uncertainty. They are the one checking the temperature. They are the one wondering if access still exists. They are the one noticing that your energy is no longer kneeling at the edge of their distance. And suddenly, they lean in. But listen carefully. This is where many people destroy everything. The second the avoidant returns with a crack in the wall, you rush back in with all the stored emotion from the silence. You over-explain. You over-reassure. You over-give. You collapse the space instantly because relief floods your body and you mistake contact for safety. And the pattern begins again. So if they come back, do not meet them with the old hunger. Meet them with groundedness. Let them move toward you without immediately feeding them the entire emotional supply they once took for granted. Let them experience that access to you now requires presence, consistency, emotional capacity. Let the connection breathe instead of smothering it with the fear of losing it again. Because if you break your own transformation just to keep them comfortable, you will teach them that a small return is all it takes to reopen full access. No. If they want closeness now, they have to stay for it. They have to tolerate it, participate in it, help build it. Otherwise, your silence was just an intermission, not a change. And that is the warning. Do not use no contact to awaken their pursuit, only to abandon yourself the moment they stir. Do not spend weeks becoming strong just to fold the second they knock. Do not turn your healing into bait. Let it become real. Because the deepest point of this is not to make an avoidant miss you. It is to become someone who no longer needs to be half abandoned in order to feel love. Read that again in your bones. You are not here to become more understandable to someone committed to distance. You are not here to prove that your tenderness is safe. You are not here to perform patience until someone learns how to hold you. You are here to remember that your nervous system deserves peace too. That your heart is not a waiting room. That your love is not an audition. That your silence can be sacred, not because it manipulates them, but because it protects you from turning your worth into pursuit. And when that clicks, really clicks, something almost frightening happens. You stop fearing their withdrawal, because you finally understand that someone pulling away is not proof that you are too much. Sometimes it is proof that they cannot hold depth without dissociating from it. Sometimes it is proof that your presence touches wounds they have spent years outrunning. Sometimes it is proof that love alone does not override an unhealed nervous system. That truth hurts. but it also frees you. Because then their silence is no longer a verdict on your value. It is information. It is limitation. It is pattern. It is not your identity. So if you do this during no contact with an avoidant, if you chase, hint, test, prove, explain, monitor, or quietly beg through harmless gestures, yes, you push them away. But more importantly, you push yourself away from the version of you that is finally ready to stop confusing emotional hunger with love. Choose differently. Become the pause that does not panic. Become the silence that does not plead. Become the person who can feel deeply without collapsing. Become the one who no longer needs someone else's capacity in order to trust your own worth. And if they come back, let them meet that person. If they don't, let them lose that person. Either way, you win. Because the real power was never in making them return. It was in becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves just because somebody else did.